And there were houses open, and you can just go in houses and people are celebrating and they're just, you come, one of the teaching of Mark Bills, he started explaining what the early church might have looked like. It would be like a big house, open house, and when you come inside the house, there will be a garden in the house, and there will be groups of people here, another group of people there, and this one will be dancing and singing, and this one will be praying together. Another batch of people there are, having communion. Another batch of people there, somebody's being prayed for, somebody's being raised from the dead. Miracles are happening all over the place, and you go around the city, and there's another house there that's open, and they're worshiping the Lord, and they're doing all kinds of things, and this is how they got. Just remember Paul, when he teaches in the book of Corinthians, when you come together in the church, right? Some of you bring a psalm, bring a hymn, bring a song, and you minister one to another. If any of you have a word of revelation, that was the thing then. That was the early church. And they loved each other. There was not much in terms of, backbiting and all those things. They were just loving each other as family. They enjoyed the fellowship. And even their enemies cried out in frustration, "Behold, how they love one another." What kind of people are these? All right? And you can see, you Google some of the statements that were made about Christians in the early days, you'll be amazed what you might find. So the spread of the church. And Acts chapter 5 verse 28, it says, "You have filled Jerusalem with your teaching." Wow. Ooh, the early church was like that. It started with 120 people and they burst out. They went up to the north and went to the south, went to the east and went to the west. And the whole known world of their times, it spread. And it's been mentioned in Acts 17 verse 6, "These who have turned the world upside down have come here too." What is this? These are the Christians. This is the early church who have turned the whole world upside down. And they're coming. That is the church then. And within the first 67 years, Christian missionaries like Paul took the gospel to the entire known world of that time. So wherever the gospel went, the church took hold and grew rapidly. It was not unusual for the church to be planted in the city, and it just quickly grew to 20,000 to 30,000. It was so amazing how the gospel of the kingdom of Jesus was really just accepted by so many people. The power of God. It happened when Pentecost came. And the church literally conquered the whole Roman Empire. Remember Rome, such an empire that was there during Jesus' time, and literally almost the whole empire. As a matter of fact, I think more than half of the empire. Tertullian wrote, he's another historian, he's a writer, "We have filled every place belonging to you, cities, islands, castles, towns, assemblies, your very camp, tribes, companies, palace, senate, forum. We leave you your temples only. We can count your armies. Our numbers in a single province will be greater." Wrong spelling. Philip Schaff, another author about the history of the church. "It may be fairly asserted that by the end of the 3rd century, the name of Christ was known, revered, and persecuted in every province and every city of the empire. In all probability, at the close of the 3rd century, the church numbered 10 million souls." That's an estimate, 10 million souls. And some estimate by the end of the 3rd century, population of the empire had, half of the population of the empire, of the Roman Empire, had converted to Christianity. Half of Rome. And it took place within a totally pagan empire, where so much occult, immoral culture was existing in the midst of severe persecution, yet half of the population became Christian. That's the power of the church, of the early church. But unfortunately, there's also the death of the church. At the year 325, something happened that caused the church to die. By the year 500, the early church had ceased to exist. What happened? The death of the church was caused by something that seemed at first like a great blessing. Great! Wow! This is good! Like somebody like the president of the Philippines is a Christian. Wow! But this guy was Roman emperor by the name of Constantine. He was converted. It was his conversion. And it was in the year 312 AD, a time of great turmoil in Rome, where the empire was almost going to be divided. There were two rivalries going on. Maxentius and Constantine were struggling to seize control over imperial Rome. And as they prepared for battle, as they were going out to war to find out who is going to be the emperor of the kingdom, Constantine prayed to his god. His god is Mithras, the Persian sun god. And Constantine saw a vision. This guy looks and worships at the sun. What do you expect? You'd see a vision. So he started praying to his sun god, Mithras. So he looked up into the sun again and started to pray because he was going out to battle to fight Maxentius. So here he was, he saw a vision. And the vision said, conquer by this. Because he looked at the sun so hard that somehow there's a cross. And the cross, the message to him was, with this sign, conquer. Conquer by this. By what? What he was seeing was a cross. Because the Roman Empire was being invaded by Christians, so the cross meant something to him. Oh, this must be Christians. This must be Jesus Christ of the Christians. It says, conquer by this. Okay? So Constantine came to the throne with the announcement that he was now a follower of Christ. So he said, okay, now I will conquer by this. And guess what? He won the battle. So he attributed that with his vision of the cross. And now he said, he's a follower of Christ. Okay? What was the problem? Well, Constantine not only legalized Christianity, he tried to improve it. In return for his favor, he wanted control over all of the Christians. So he was known as the Pontius Maximus, Pontifex Maximus, a high priest. And in the year 325, Constantine called and presided over the first general council of the church. So he gathered all the church leaders. I will head over the church now. He's a pagan Roman emperor. Okay? And he is in control of Rome. So he gathered all the Christians. I'm a convert of Christ. I will gather. Now, let's have a council. And we call it the Council of Nicaea. That was the first council. And he headed it. It was not a council headed by Christians who were there, who loved the Lord and they celebrated the Lord. It was now the Roman emperor who said. And his purpose was, let's bring a new image to Christianity. So, here he is. Constantine literally reinvented Christianity. And Christianity after Nicaea was different religion than Christianity before Nicaea. So let's look at some of these changes. And I'll share to you a number of things. There are numerous, but I tell you, it gets bloody. Well, here's the emperor's new church. There's no more house church. The death of the house church came. So all those people who are gathering in the house churches, celebrating the Lord, just having a wonderful time, doing all kinds of things, worshiping God. Now he says, no more of those. So he started building a big church. The St. John Lateran, it's a basilica. We saw it. It still stands today in Rome. It was patterned after the imperial palace. He's an emperor. Actually, the design of that thing is that there is an elevated post, a semicircle, that where that person kind of who will be the one looking after the laity. So it's really like a royal march to a throne because it was designed like an imperial palace. So there were basilica-type churches that were built all over the empire. They started building church buildings. So no more house churches. So Constantine then enacted a law and says that all houses of prayer, because they were known as houses of prayer then, must be abolished, and forbidding Christians from holding church in private homes. And he even worded it so that he will just strike terror, okay, in the minds of the subjects, so that they will be compelled to obey his laws. So there goes the house church. And then he changed worship. He decided to improve the ways the church worshiped. Less than 1 year, a 1-year-old supposed to be a Christian convert. He said, I'm going to make plain to them what kind of worship is to be offered to God. What higher duty have I as emperor than to cause all to offer God true religion and due worship? What does he know about worshiping God? And Constantine's Roman mind, the highest expression of worship was found in the solemn rituals of the Roman imperial court. And if you look at imperial court, if you know what they do and so on and so forth, and you look at the churches today, you know, when they have this choir, when they have this pulpit, this throne, this so on and so forth, it's very much similar to imperial Rome in the court. And solemn ceremonies were fixed, written forms of worship. You were given something to read, so it's all written down, and that's how you worship. Then the burning of incense, the burning of candles started to come. Then the rejection. Here comes number 3, the rejection of the church Jewish or Hebraic roots. This is what the emperor did. Like many Romans, Constantine hated Jews. He called them a conquered people. They're hostile to Rome. So Constantine decided to purge the church of Jewish elements and commanded the church to avoid following customs of the Jews. So he outlawed biblical feasts and Sabbaths. Why? Because the early Christian churches were celebrating the biblical feasts, the Sabbaths. Not to do that as something to gain from it, but something to be blessed by it. Okay? So, the early church were doing this, and that's why he said he outlawed this, because it rang Jewish to him. So the decree came in Nicaea, let us have nothing in common with the Jews, who are our adversaries. This irregularity, observing the Passover, must be corrected. And Eusebius, an ally of Constantine, it appeared an unworthy thing that we should follow practices of the Jews. Let us withdraw ourselves from all participation in their baseness. All should unite in avoiding all participation in the conduct of Jews. Wow. And Lazare described changes resulting from Nicaea. He said, before Nicaea, Christians attended the synagogues and celebrated the Jewish holidays. It required the action of Nicene Council to free Christianity of this last bond by which it had still been tied to its cradle. So, the early church were meeting in houses and in synagogues. I have something else to tell you. You know, if you read the New Testament now, the word synagogue and the word ecclesia, which is church, actually synagogue and ecclesia are the same word, the same meaning. The meaning of it is assembly. Okay? So they use the word ecclesia or synagogue, assembly. But somehow something went wrong with our New Testament in how it was translated to English. I'm sidetracking, okay? It's something that I want you to know. And I want you to research for yourself. And I want you to read your own Bible. And then if you can have a Hebrew and Greek transliteration Bible with you, that would be great. And, you know, they interchange synagogue and ecclesia. It so happens that when they translated it in English, instead of saying ecclesia, they say church. And when they say synagogue, they don't say assembly or what, they say synagogue. But when synagogue is being used as something nice, they would call it assembly. And if the synagogue is being used something not nice, they call it synagogue, the synagogue of Satan. The Bible was written in Hebrew, the Old Testament, then it was translated to Greek, which is the Septuagint, and then from the Septuagint it was translated into English. And then when it started English, these people who started translating it to English somehow were a little bit biased with synagogue and ecclesia. And I challenge you to read the book of James, because the book of James, chapter 1, I believe, or just the beginning of chapter 2, I cannot remember now, that it speaks about when you assemble together as an assembly, right? You show now no favoritism to each other and so on, right? And you see someone coming in like with nice clothes and so on. The word there, when you gather together as an assembly, the word in the book of James, assembly, you go and research that, and you look at the Hebrew and Greek transliteration Bible, and look at the word assembly, And look how it's translated.